it's my own perspective. I'll give you my own personal perspective on the issue, which is, there are times in which humanitarians can't speak as loudly as they'd like to because they need to preserve their access, their ability to feed people. But at the end of the day, I think that humanitarians, have to that we have to accept. We have to speak out, and we have to, and ultimately, we have to do it because, number one, I believe that governments can be moved by that kind of pressure. Number two, I believe we have to keep faith with victims who are listening to what we have to say. And I believe that we have to bear witness, and the process of bearing witness in a public way can have salutary effects for the people who are suffering. But I say that knowing that in the very short term, when you do that kind of thing, you can lose your access and you can get cut off. So, but if I have to vote, I vote on the side of speaking out.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, let me thank you again for your testimony and for all your incredible work. We really appreciate what your office is doing and the focus your office has on this issue. As you can tell, we're all a little bit frustrated by the way things have kind of played out. I mean, I think some of us had thought that the administration would have taken a strong, and not your office, but the president would have taken a stronger and more vocal stand earlier. And I think he gave a great speech. But I'm reminded of when I went to that refugee camp filled with refugees from Darfur in Chad, and I witnessed a young woman giving testimony to the people at the International Criminal Court. And I was amazed. I mean, it was one of the most tragic, most horrific stories I had ever heard about her entire family being wiped out before her very eyes. And she delivered the testimony, and I didn't know what to ask her. I said, I don't know how you can recount this. I mean, I know how difficult it must be. And she said, the only way that I could not stand living at this particular point is if I thought that the rest of the world didn't care what happened to me, and that haunts me. Every time I think of this issue, is this woman who is, lost her entire family. She's given testimony before the International Criminal Court in this refugee camp that is not very safe, even with the international presence there, and the fact that given the intensity of the killing and everything that's going on there, it just seems to me that we need to step it up a little bit. And again, I go back to Nick Kristoff's piece, about that there has to be stronger sticks. I mean, I don't think you're going to get Mr. Bashir to be nice if you say we're going to lift this sanction or that sanction. He's got friends that have obviously continued to buy his oil and send him weapons. I mean, I think he's probably more interested about his own self-preservation than anything else. But I do worry that if after the referendum and things begin to deteriorate, that there has to be a stick in place before that referendum, because I worry that this awful, terrible tragedy, which has been a genocide, will continue. And I agree with what Mr. Smith has said. I think China has not been a very good player here. I think it's really, I can't believe we don't have more leverage with China on this issue, but this we're very, very concerned about this. And so what your office does, obviously, is very key to this. And we appreciate very much all that you've done and what this administration has done in terms of refugees and internally displaced people all around the world. I mean, this is a terrible crisis.
If I may just say one more thing, two points. First, the level of attention this issue is getting within the administration, in my view, is extraordinary right now, and from the President, the Secretary of State, on down, and so I can't predict how things are going to come out, but I am confident that all the tools that we have at our disposal are being used to get to the right place on this issue. I really believe that. I wouldn't say it if I didn't. Well, the second point I would make is your interest is critical, and I applaud it, and I think it should continue, and I think you should, stay strongly engaged. Not only do I welcome it, but I think others in the administration welcomes it. I know the administration welcomes it.
Your assurance that the administration is taking this seriously and at the highest levels is very comforting, and so we appreciate that, and we look forward to working with you in the coming weeks or months.
Okay,
Thanks. Now I'm going to call up our next panel, Vincent Cushatel, the regional representative from the UNHCR, Michelle Gobadon, the president of Refugees International, and Ton Choi, the former executive director, Sudanese Community of Western Michigan, and unaccompanied Sudanese refugee minor. Mr. Cushatel, we will begin with you. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. On behalf of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugee.
If you could just hold one second. I forgot to introduce Elizabeth Anok-Cook. Am I saying that? Kuch, who's a board member of the Lost Boys and Girls of Sudan National Network and a former unaccompanied refugee minor. I welcome you here today as well. I'm sorry. You may continue.
Thank you. On behalf of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugee, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity you are giving us to appear before you today to address UNHCR concern about the humanitarian situation in and around Sudan. My name is Vincent Costel. I'm the new regional representative for UNHCR here. I've been working 25 years with UNHCR in various parts of the world. I've traveled a couple of times to Sudan, on countries neighboring Sudan, I think all of them except probably Eritrea. And although I just arrived in Washington a few weeks ago, I'm aware of the critical role that your Commission is playing in shedding lights on some of the humanitarian crises on human rights violation. I look therefore forward to the opportunity to continue the excellent relationship between the Commission and our office. UNHCR's presence in Sudan spans over 4 decades. It started in the late 60s with the victims of the Eritrean-Ethiopian War in eastern Sudan, and our operation extended to assist internally displaced persons in Darfur as of 2004, and then with the returnees in South Sudan in 2005. We have 19 small offices throughout Sudan, and thanks to the funding that we receive from the US government and other donors, together with NGO partners, including faith-based organizations and community-based organizations, we currently assist and try to provide some protection services to about 1,800,000 persons in Sudan. These are people in 3 main categories: internally displaced persons, so in Khartoum, in Darfur, and in the south. They account for about 1,200,000 people. We have refugees from different countries, mainly in Khartoum and a bit in the west of Sudan. Those refugees are, like Assistant Secretary Schwartz said, are coming from Chad, DRC, Eritrea, Ethiopia, mainly. And we have been assisting refugees returning to the south of Sudan since 2005, approximately 330,000 persons. We should not forget the 400,000 Sudanese refugees or asylum seekers that are living in countries surrounding Sudan and further afield. I won't go into details regarding developments affecting all these populations in Sudan and around Sudan. Assistant Secretary Schwartz covered part of that, and I don't want to sound too repetitive, but in my written testimonies, there are some details on those developments that are not very positive in relation to Darfur, a bit more promising in relation with solutions for people in eastern Sudan. I'd like today just to focus my comments on 3 issues which all relate to the upcoming referendum in South Sudan. Those issues are the potential large-scale return from the north to the south. Second issue, potential large-scale forced displacement affecting southerners in the north, and possibly some northerners in the south. And the third issue would be issues relating to the potential lack of effective nationality or statelessness issue following the referendum. On the large-scale return from the north, a few weeks ago, the government of South Sudan has announced a plan called Come Home and Choose program, where it foresaw the return of about 1.5 million people to South Sudan. Following comments by the humanitarian community, the government of South Sudan has revised downwards the figure, is now talking about a return of 500,000 people for the referendum. The new plan is focusing a bit more on sustainable return and sort of delink the issue of return with the referendum. We welcome this development. We also believe that any movement should occur within a climate of respect for the principle of freedom of choice on movement, and secondary displacement should be prevented. We also think it's important to ascertain the wishes of the IDP population. Many of them may adopt some sort of a wait-and-see attitude for the time being. They will let the referendum go, and then they will decide about their future when the options are becoming clearer. One of our underlying concerns about potential large-scale return would be the creation of all sorts of temporary sites. And I've seen that in too many places. You create temporary site for the return, and the temporary site remain there 20 years later. We don't want to have protracted camp in that situation, so we have to make sure that all the reintegration efforts by the government of South Sudan and by the humanitarian agencies focus on services in and around the urban centers in the south rather than on temporary site. We should keep in mind that most of the IDPs have been displaced for more than 2 decades. They are living in urban centers and they're not likely to return to rural areas. Risk of forced displacement, as Representative Smith mentioned it, I mean, we are very concerned by all sorts of press articles and media reports that we get from Sudan, including again this morning. And those statements suggest that Southerners living in the north could lose their citizenship or some basic human rights related to their citizenship should the outcome of the referendum lead to a declaration of independence. Many Southerners living in the north or in neighboring countries may wish to remain where they are currently living. Some of them have re-established where they are for a number of years. But they are afraid, and there are a lot of speculation within the IDP community, they are afraid that their situation could become quickly untenable in the aftermath of the referendum. The same concern apply also to some northern traders or members of mixed marriages living in the south of the country. It is very important, therefore, that the negotiation process quickly addressed all key outstanding issues. And unfortunately, we are 3 months ahead of the referendum, and there's still many key outstanding issues. The one on what is the border between the north and the south. Other outstanding issues relate to sharing of the debt or of the wealth. And there are many clarifications needed regarding the rights of the people in the post-referendum era. In particular, minority rights, for the groups that straddle the border, including semi-nomadic and pastoralist tribe in the south. Third point, citizenship arrangement in the context of referendum. While there are some possibilities for statelessness to result following the referendum, more likely is the potential for lack of effective citizenship that guarantees the full right of nationality, like freedom of movement, property rights, family reunion, employment. An estimated 2 million people could be impacted by the discussion on citizenship. And this is why it is important that those discussions take place very soon on all issues relating to citizenship.